How's it going, everybody? Armor Studio NYC back for real today because I was on vacation to Japan. I don't think this counts, but it's Japan nonetheless. But no, I was on vacation, and not only did I visit Japan, but I did get to get in touch with some of the Disney characters. Also, if you guys haven't noticed, we have some new audio playing thanks to my good friend Dorian Keys. I will leave his link to his profile down below in the description. Let's get started today's video though. Today we're going to be building the Stug III Ausf.B Sd.Kfz.142. Yes, very, very long title, but I've been actually meaning to build this kit for a little while. I just didn't know exactly how to build it. On my vacation, I kind of got some ideas on how to build this Stug III Ausf.B Sd.Kfz.142 from Tamiya in 135th scale. Actually, I started building this model before I went on vacation, and now that I'm back, I'm going to implement some of those ideas that I had onto this model here. This kit is very good. It does have some photo etch. It's one of like these new-ish molds that Tamiya has been coming out with lately. Very impressed by the build and quality of these. If I was impressed before, I'm definitely even more so impressed now. So after all the goodies and getting everything out of the plastic, it's time to start building. And the first step here is to build this backplate, which houses the exhaust and some tow cables, and it looks like your basic run-of-the-mill backplate for any tank from World War II. Pieces go together very well, but that's to be expected. Just a little bit of Tamiya thin cement in these places, and you'll be well on your way to constructing a very easy to build yet complicated looking model. And no, I will not continue to repeat the name of this model because it is way too long, and if I pronounce it again, I might be out of breath, honestly. Also, sorry if I have not offended anyone by not being able to know what Sd.Kfz.142 stands for, but maybe I will by the end of this video. Who knows? But yes, guys, so as you guys remember, Tamiya is a big favorite on this channel. I promise I do have other manufacturers. However, these are just some of the kits that I've had in my stash for a really, really long time. And Tamiya are really good, well, not beginner kits, but they're beginner-friendly kits. And I had gotten a lot of these when I first started modeling a few years ago. Not so much specifically this one, but I had the inspiration to build this one, so here we are. A little bit of a surprise to me that this model actually has workable suspension, which is going to be great if I ever get around to building dioramas, which I have all of the equipment for. I'm just trying to get a little bit more skillful in terms of weathering and stuff like that, and then the dioramas will come your way, and I'll make them for your viewing pleasure and for my time consumption, because I know they're very, very long build processes. But moving on, and more in line with this video, the suspension for this tank is very, very cool. It's very minimal. There's very few parts to actually construct the suspension. You know, a lot of other kits and a lot of other manufacturers, they have a whole bunch of parts that you need to glue on here, but thankfully with Tamiya, they've kept it very simple. Very ingenious design too. These suspension arms are notched, but they're also sloped, so that way you can kind of push them through and it will lock the suspension to the lower hull, but not in place. Since it is movable and it is notched to a certain degree, it won't be able to move beyond that. So I think that's pretty cool, and something I wasn't really expecting, nor something that I know was in this model. So yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you, Tamiya. that's pretty cool. And thank you for making the workable suspension easy. I know in some kits and all that other stuff, workables are not the easiest thing to achieve, and they're also fairly messy. Now, this part here, I'm gonna need some type of compensation because this was so hard to film. These little springs that they gave you were under tension, not a lot, but if you did not put it all the way on, it would fly away. So I guess this is an eyeglass warning as well. Yeah, put your eyeglasses on, folks. These springs can come flying back at you. And it's pretty cool because it's only the most rear set and the most forward set of running wheels have this active suspension, which I find very interesting because I wouldn't be able to really have this on a upward slope or a downward, like sharp slope, because those parts do rebound. So whatever workable suspension you will see in a future video is gonna have to just be like a bump in the middle just to get it, you know, the point across that this is workable. We're using Tamiya heavy cement here for the road wheels because I always feel like this is a load bearing part of the model, so I would want a lot of strong bond with it. I haven't decided whether or not I'm going to use the kit tracks, which are these like new vinyls, which are pretty cool, or if I'm going to use like plastic or metal tracks. Inventory is still very hard to come by. Prices are still a little bit crazy for aftermarket stuff, and seeing as I just went on vacation, not that money is tight, but we're modeling on a budget here, folks. So yeah, that update will come in a future video, as per which one, maybe if I'm able to get my hands on some custom tracks, then I'll do it that way as well. So moving on here, this another surprise to the kit, even though there's a picture of it on the box. I did not know that this actually had a relatively subdued interior, but an interior nonetheless, where you actually get a little bit of a fighting compartment, some seating. You'll see later in this video of the whole gun mechanism, which is pretty cool. But yeah, this was again a real enjoyment to build, and something a little bit different, because usually when I build tank models, I construct, and then you save the painting as the last step. But here, obviously, I would need to paint this interior compartment. It's one of the reasons why I stopped doing airplane models, which is because I love getting into a flow of just building and then painting, instead of building, putting all the building equipment away to bring all the paint equipment out to paint, just to put all that away to build and then to paint again. But we'll make an exception for tanks because it's well, I feel like it's a lot easier, and I feel like there's less pieces to go into than like a whole cockpit, which, like, thinking about it now, I do kind of miss airplanes. But this is the interior after it's been painted. I decided to attach some of the other little add-ons to the fenders here, and then it dawned on me, and this was one of the ideas I had while I was on vacation. Let's chip the interior, because it would never be completely clean. So we're going to use our base paint, which is our German gray, and we're going to grab a piece of sponge, unload the sponge onto a napkin until you kind of get this little like chippy pattern that you can do for quick chips, as well as a little bit of distressing. The hairspray method is another method that is pretty good for chipping, but it kind of becomes unreliable and it becomes tricky. You don't know where the chips are going to come. With this, at least you get to plan out all these chips. So I chipped out the side compartments. I chipped out where the crew would be, you know, standing or walking. Heat and all that other stuff would make this paint chip. Moving on to the gun assembly. Now, I actually had a really good time building this gun. There were a lot of parts, that being because it does have a little bit of an interior. So a lot of these parts that you see on the sprue here are actually going to be used, which is very, very exciting. I'm big on detail. I love detail, just because it adds so much more to the model. But after building this, we're gonna do our same thing. We're gonna paint it white, and then we're going to chip it with the dark gray. Again, construction on this is very, very easy. Really no need for cleanup or like sanding or anything like that, because they do come off the sprue very easy. There's not a lot of excess plastic, and the mold lines are crisp, no flash or anything else like that, which is again a reason why Tamiya kits are very beginner friendly kits, and also kits that are relatively fun to put together in a short amount of time if you're an experienced or professional plastic modeler. Now, this is going to be our photo etch part right here, the aluminum gun barrel. Very, very cool. You could actually see a little bit of the rifling on the inside of the barrel once I attach it. You can see it for a brief second. It was kind of hard to film. It wouldn't really come into focus. But we just use a little bit of our VMS Flexi 5K, and yeah, just plant the gun barrel in there and call it a day. Now we're going to move on to the actual interior of the gun. So here we have our collection basket for shells, and this is our breech or our loader. Had a little bit of difficulty actually putting this on. I don't really remember why. I think it was just because I had it in a bad angle, but again, fit together very, very nicely. Use a little bit of Tamiya thin cement, because since we are exposing this part with some detail, we would want to not have it a gluey mess, right? As we continue moving on, we just want to add a little bit more, because there are some parts that go attached to that and it may get a little loose. Then you attach the front of the gun onto its mantlet, like so. I always test fit before I actually do this, because I just want to make sure I have it on the right way instead of putting it on upside down. And if you almost caught it, I almost did. Thankfully, I test fitted to see exactly how it goes. Don't need a lot of cement with this. Tamiya cement does its job, and it does its job very, very well. Now we have the rest of the loader, and again, I mean, this is just great construction. No seams, no flash. Once you put the glue there, it looks like it's just one solid part, which is going to look really, really great. Once we paint it and chip it, you won't even be able to tell that this thing came disassembled, which is really, really, really what you want when it comes to constructing any type of plastic model. You don't want, you know, seam lines, and you don't want it to look like it came in pieces. You want to make it look like it was machined and manufactured, and of course real. So big kudos obviously to Tamiya for constructing such a fine kit with so much detail. Looks really, really good. All right, and now we have our gun support. So this is actually the portion of the gun that's going to get attached into the fighting compartment and the lower hull. It's going to be attached by a poly cap, and it also allows the gun to swivel up and down. Now, these Stugs, if you noticed, or if you're aware of some of their construction, they wouldn't really allow the turret to move side to side. So it had no horizontal capabilities. You'd have to turn the whole tank for that to happen. You would only be able to adjust the elevation of the shot, which kind of made this like a fixed gun scenario, like a mobile fixed gun. But they were very effective during World War II and fairly popular, especially during battles of like Kursk. But nonetheless, still a very effective weapon for the Germans in World War II. As I see, I tested out some of the features there. Now here comes the turret slash upper hull, because it's pretty much one and the same. So this is just the top of the fighting compartment here. You're able to glue these side pieces on. They have some amount of detail, like a German radio there. And on the other side, I think it's just a bit of armor, if I'm not mistaken. This part didn't give me trouble per se, but I wanted to really make sure I lined up these parts correctly and didn't have them leaning or swaying one way or another or uneven to the construction of this turret slash upper hull. Just because I wanted to make it look, you know, correct, which you should always do. But this part is removable, so that way you could see the inside of the tank, the fighting compartment. So when you remove this and you look underneath, you would still want it to look clean and realistic. So you don't want it to be a gluey mess or a sloppy mess. This is also something you can't really hide with weathering, because there would be no dirt or mud on the inside of this. So you kind of have to make sure it's cleaned as if it was meant to be there. These are our final shots, guys, of the tank. I know it looks like a little bit of a colored mess with some overspray. The tracks aren't on it. It kind of looks kind of boring, but this is pretty much the construction of this tank. I managed to put on all of these little add-ons onto the side fenders, as well as the hatches to leave open. And so far, I think it's going pretty well, even though it's just the build process. I'm super duper excited to show you guys the painting process, because I have a really good idea for this tank. But guys, thank you so much for your patience, and thank you so much for supporting this channel. And I will see you guys next week with a new painting video. So stay tuned for that. And as always, have a good day.